Oh my god, that was louder than ever. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night. I still do it wrong, even though it's not the first time I've done it. Welcome back to another review, chosen by Amelia this week, of course, because it's that time of week. I, of course, am your host, Purple Midnight 8, joined as ever by Amelia. Uh,
Hello.
hello. I was going to say hello, Amelia, and I was waiting for you to say it. The Obsidian Nook, Petal ASMR, whatever the fuck you want to call her.
I want to identify as a broccoli.
I want to identify as a broccoli. Anyway, we are looking at Scream 2 this week, the at last.
I
Long
thought it
overdue.
was about time we do another one.
Yeah, Scream 1 is at least a month old by now, and it's about time we really got round to covering the sequel. May I add, only just slightly inferior to the original. Still a good film, not as good as the original. Like, definitely character wise, and obviously no Matthew Lillard is Big Sad. So, anyway, yeah, as mentioned, this is Amelia's pick for the week.
Just a side note, I have to send you every video that I do now because it doesn't let me save videos. I have to share them to you and then
Thanks for just not making this related to the video at all.
save.
Thanks for that. I was waiting for that. Just a side note, here's something that has nothing to do with anything we're doing at the minute. Yeah.
Well, it's colouring, isn't it?
Hmm. So Amelia, what made you pick this video this movie this week? What made you pick Scream?
Because I asked you and you said we've only done the first one, so I thought we'd better get on with the second one.
Well, yeah, we have got what, six to cover?
And we've got Halloween,
And we've got
so
all the Halloweens. So it's sort of going to be switching in between them for the next few weeks. But for now, we are here with Scream 2. It is directed by Wes Craven, of course. Wrote the first one, also famous for his Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. We will eventually cover. That'll be fun. It's very campy. I think you'd weirdly enjoy it. It's very fucking strange. So yeah, it's also written by Kevin Williamson, who I believe wrote the original one as well. He has a little cameo in this film when he's interviewing Cotton. So we'll get right into it. Spoilers ahead. This film is what, 26 years old. It's
it came out a
younger than
year
you.
after.
Hmm. So yeah, we'll get right into it. We're not going to mess around. At a movie theatre, Maureen, with her channel debut, Jada Pinkett Smith, the woman who's apparently going to play Rapunzel despite being bald. Have you heard that?
No.
Oh my god. Also, the famous person involved with "Keep My Wife's Name out your fucking mouth."
Will
If you
Smith.
Will Smith's ex-wife person. I don't know what the fuck they are now. So yeah, Maureen and her boyfriend Phil, played by Omar Epps, are attending a preview of the in-universe parody Stab. Stab is a big part of this. It's a parody of the franchise itself,
It's a film within a film,
which you find
which,
very trippy.
yeah, it's weird.
It gets weirder in the sequels when the film actually starts with that film.
Mm.
Anyway, so yeah, they enter the theatre with several other patrons, are all masked in the classic Ghostface mask. In a movie, we re-watch the opening of Scream remade for the film. That movie's Casey, who is played by Heather Graham, is similarly stalked by Ghostface. And Phil scares Maureen as she returns from getting snacks, but he heads to the bathroom as she goes back indoors. In the bathroom, Phil has no other choice but to use the stall, where he overhears some interesting noises in his neighbour's stall. He presses his ear to it, and Ghostface stabs his knife through it, right in the ear, and kills him. And of course, after doing a scary movie, we can't unsee it being a penis that goes into the side of his head.
Yeah, so every time we watched this, all I could think of was Scary Movie and think, oh, this is going to happen next. And it didn't. And we were like, wrong film.
Yeah, no, that has stuck in our minds more than we
Yeah,
thought.
I,
It's not. Sorry. Right, go on.
um, yeah, I'd probably not watch Scary Movie and the other films until you've watched the other films, because once you see Scary Movie,
You
yeah,
can't even see it.
but
It's horrible.
I was gonna say they took the piss out of what was it, The Grudge. Scream.
The World, Scream. There's all sorts.
Signs, the one with the weird,
There's a lot of
messages.
films that they parody, obviously. So it's best to just watch them. Well, it's difficult to know what they're going to do when you haven't seen it. So Ghostface, wearing Phil's jacket, sits down next to Maureen and proceeds to stab her in the gut, as the in-universe Casey, well, in the stab movie version of Casey, dies in the film as well. Maureen staggers to the stage crying for help, which is ignored by the audience, who believe she's just part of, the experience. She lets out one blood-curdling scream before collapsing and dying. So after the titles, we have Sydney, once again played by Neve Campbell, I believe is how you pronounce it, awakens to a phone call at college, seemingly from Ghostface. However, she reads out his caller ID, which obviously makes it so he's not. She sees Cotton Weary, once again played by Liev Schreiber, after his brief appearance in Scream 1, being interviewed about being found innocent, as her roommate Hallie, played by Elise Neal, speaks with her. So, at a film class, Cece, played by returning Sarah Michelle Gellar from Scooby-Doo 1 and 2, of course, and also Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but we haven't covered it.
Who was also in Scooby-Doo.
I said Scooby-Doo.
Oh,
if you were listening, I said Scooby-Doo first. She was also in Scooby-Doo. No. God, I'm glad you told them that, and I didn't waste my time.
I'm sorry.
In case you didn't know, she was also in Scooby-Doo.
See, but I get obsessed with one thing, so I'm obsessed with colouring at the minute, so everything else is just going through my head.
Was she in anything else we covered? Or is this it?
Buffy.
We haven't covered Buffy, you mong.
She's in Buffy.
So I said she's in Scooby-Doo, but also in Buffy, which we aren't covering. And then you went, oh, and also Scooby-Doo and Buffy. Thanks for that. Yeah. So is there an echo in here? Are you a few minutes behind? Anyway, so Cece, Mickey, played by Timothy Oliphant, and Randy, returning from Scream 1, played by Jamie Kennedy, of course. Speaking of murders, and now they are essentially in a sequel. Sydney pulls out Randy from the class, and she shares her concerns with him. Sydney's new boyfriend, Derek, played by Jerry O'Connell, interrupts them, and the three walk away. Gail, played again by Courtney Cox, and a new cameraman, Joel, played by Dwayne Martin, are interrupted by a woman, Debbie Salt, played by Laurie Metcalf, who Gail insults. Sydney and her friends watch Gail try and get a scoop from the police chief. I think he has a name, I didn't pick it up, I apologise. He is played by Louis Arquette, the father of Dewey in real life, David Arquette. Speaking of, Dewey, played by David Arquette, is wandering around when Sydney reunites with him. Gail approaches, bringing Cotton with her in order to get a story, and Sydney slaps her and leaves. It's not a Scream movie if Sydney doesn't deck Gail. Gail, while chasing Sydney, has a rocky reunion with Dewey and gets annoyed over how he was presented in her book. I don't know if I mentioned this in the last film, but the amount of times these movies make Gail out to be an asshole after the last film, it does get a bit repetitive. She has this big redemption arc, and then start of the next film, she's a prick again. And also not together with Dewey. That night, a party is thrown on campus, which Sydney and Hallie attend. Cece also elsewhere receives a call from Ghostface, who frightens her into locking up the sorority house until some noises are heard from upstairs. She attempts to call campus security until she loses signal. One of her sorority sisters surprises her until the phone rings, where they are distracted by it as Ghostface enters. Sister leaves, and instead of simply running away, she searches the house, of course, until Ghostface attacks, chasing her around the house until he catches her, stabbing her, and throwing her off a balcony to her death.
And then that was the bit where you commented about how they all fall in that one same position.
Anytime someone falls,
I never thought of it until you.
Until we watch more, you will notice how many times they're like perfectly positioned, not like awkwardly bent. It's always like a perfect position they landed in, and it's hard to unsee once you have someone mention it. So at the party, which includes an apparent Matthew Lillard voice cameo in the background, I couldn't make it out. However, that does now put him tied once more with Linda Cardellini for appearances on the channel. Technically, I believe this is because when I read it up, this was meant to be more connected in the three films together, because they were going to have Stu as the killer in the third one. However, that got cancelled, but they still kept his cameo in this one, which is unfortunate because they should just retcon him to be alive and then actually have a film that's different. Instead of being like, oh, who is it? We've got all our central cast, and then there's some new characters. Oh no, who's killing people?
As I say, bring it back for like number 7.
I said to someone we volunteer with, I said, it would make a good bait and switch to actually have him return, because you'd have the usual of, oh my god, which one of us is the killer? Oh no, who could it be? And then it'd be none of them and have this fucking psychotic return of Matthew Lillard. Because it would make, like, especially with Scream 6.
And he already said he wanted to come back and he would be more than happy to do it again.
Yeah, and there's, even in Scream 6, they have a sly line of being like, oh, if you believe Stu's dead. It's like, oh, please bring him back. I love him too much. But the thing is, Scream 6 was marketed on the idea of, oh, someone who knows us and like has a history with us all is back to kill us, and could have been like, it's fucking Stu, but no, it was other people that we will talk about when we get there. We will get there, don't worry. We will get to the film that doesn't have Sydney in it and really missed it. Like, Sydney is obviously our main character, but we then have Scream 6 where she's not in it, and that's one of the main issues, is it's like, it doesn't have her presence, it sort of ruins it. Which is unfortunate, but... So yeah, back at the party, the guests all receive the news of Cece's death, and they rush over, finding Debbie at the scene alongside Gail, before Debbie makes a hasty exit. Dewey is there and is irritated by Gail, and Joel is understandably not happy with now reporting deaths as opposed to the interviews that he agreed to. Sydney answers the phone to Ghostface, and he suddenly attacks her, almost stabbing Derek through the front door. Derek storms into the house as Dewey arrives, and Dewey enters, finding Derek injured but no Ghostface. Sydney watches as Dewey helps him, seemingly having a flashback to Billy from the first film, which is a bit of foreshadowing considering there is a link to Billy in this film. Anyway. At the hospital, Dewey is concerned at the convenience that Derek was only slashed in the arm and not murdered when the murderer had the perfect opportunity to. At the college, the police chief writes the names of the victims, which Dewey and Gail recognise the names are related to Sydney's friends and family who died in the first film. Sydney and Derek are followed by 2 detectives, Richards and Andrews, for their safety, and Sydney tells Derek that he should leave for his own well-being. In the cafeteria, Derek suddenly sings a song from Top Gun about his love from Sydney, climbing on the tables, as he does. The scene is very awkward and very random. What's also important to know, one of the killers is there. I read this up on the wiki. He only found out about the 2 detectives from Sydney pointing them out. He didn't know that there were 2 detectives following him. And when Sydney was like, there they are, then the killer knew who it was. So he killed them as well. But we'll talk about that when we get there. Stop sending me your fucking videos! Anyway. Where was I? In an interview, Tori Spelling, returning to the channel from Scary Movie 2, which came out, I think, the year after this, played Alex in Scary Movie, the one who wanted to fuck a ghost. It's a long story, if you haven't seen Scary Movie.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Sorry, that was just like, we were like, we recognise her, and it was like...
It's like, I swear she's been on the channel before, and then it's like, oh, there she is. So yeah, she talks about her role as Sydney and Luke Wilson, the brother of Owen Wilson, as Billy in Stab. Randy speaks with Dewey about the rules of sequels and the possible suspects, and Randy lists his suggestions, which includes Gale, which surprises him. Gail talks with Joel and he tells her he read about her old cameraman and he reluctantly stays behind. Sydney participates in a rehearsal for a play as part of her mojo, however she is frightened by the other performers wearing masks, noticing one is wearing the ghost face mask. The teacher stops the play as the killer gets away and Sydney retreats backstage to recover. Derek arrives, which surprises her, and she tells him that she needs some time away from him. Derek is upset, but because he's a good guy, he respects her wishes. Randy answers the phone to Ghostface when he is with Gale and Dewey tells him to keep talking to the killer as he and Gale search for him. While speaking to Ghostface, however, he stands in front of Gale's van, where he is, surprisingly for a film like this, grabbed and murdered inside of it. His screams are then covered by a passing boombox. That really shows the fucking time. Boomboxes. Yeah. This is the same sort of thing I have to give credit for that I don't give the last Jurassic World film for. Is that at least this series has the goal to actually kill off a main character. But then as soon as Jurassic World Dominion was announced with all the returning cast from the first few films, I was like, I'm either going to be really impressed because they kill a main character, or I'm going to be majorly disappointed because they didn't. And then they didn't. And then I was just like, wow. There were no stakes because no main character died. No one was really hurt. And I was just like, that broke my heart because I was like, you could have had the balls and I could have at least given you credit for taking that risk of killing a main character off and then no one dies. And I'm just like, well, what a waste of time. Anyway, spoilers for Jurassic World Dominion. Whoopsie, didn't think that was coming around. Well, it's not really spoilers, none of them died. So yeah, Gale and Dewey call out for him, with them and Joel finding his bloody corpse in the van. After receiving a threatening message, Cotton pulls her aside out of nowhere. I should say Sydney. I forgot to write Sydney. Cotton pulls her aside out of nowhere in order to offer a TV interview, come across as suspicious, which gets him apprehended by the detectives. The chief speaks with Cotton at the station, where they indirectly blame him for the murders, but ultimately let him walk free without any evidence. Gale, after walking out from the station, is met by Joel, who tells her he's leaving town for his own safety. Gale and Dewey head to the film school and search for something to play Joel's tapes on, arriving in an auditorium. In it, the two use a VCR to play the tape, rewatching old footage, before the two of them decide to suddenly make out on the desk. It was going to get a lot more touchy-feely, but they get interrupted. They are interrupted by some footage of the victims before it cuts to a live feed of them. The killer ambushes and attacks them, causing Gale to flee into a recording studio. She's surprised to see the killer stalking around outside, hiding when he suddenly bursts into the room, but she eventually escapes into a storeroom when Dewey enters the recording studio. Dewey bangs on a window which is soundproof before the killer ambushes him and stabs him multiple times in front of her. She drops a shelf in front of the door, trapping the killer outside, who attempts to smash the glass but fails, and they escape. I said to you at this point, they really slice and dice Dewey in these films. He is cut to pieces and survives every time. Almost every time, I should say. Andrews and Richards escort Sydney and Hallie to a car as Derek arrives to say his goodbyes. A group of masked figures arrive and abduct Derek for giving Sydney his frat letters. Derek is taken to the theatre where he is hazed for his apparent crimes. Meanwhile, the detectives are ambushed. A stoplight, I think. Ghostface literally punches the window out. Andrews has his throat suddenly slit and dies, but Richards is badly beaten by Ghostface before he runs him down in his car, leaving him straddled onto the front of the car. They drive into roadworks, ultimately crashing the car into scaffolding pipes. Are you ready for best kill, ladies and gentlemen? Which impales Richard's head with one and knocks out Ghostface. That was the first realistically brutal kill we've had in a Scream film.
That was horrible.
The other one's just been stabs and throat slits, but Jesus. Hallie and Sydney are left with no other choice but to climb over Ghostface to escape. I do have some issues. Not bothering to unmask him as they do, and also do not grab Richard's gun. which we later have the killer use because it was plot reasons.
It was your one time to like unmask the killer. And
Yeah, while he's literally lying there unconscious. I don't get it. And they also do not grab the Richards' gun, which is just on the bonnet, because there's a brief shot of it laying there. They begin to run, but Sydney, for fuck's sake, insists on finding out who the killer is, which proves fatal for Hallie when the killer is missing from the front seat, only to pop out and stab Haley to death. Yeah, that was clever. She should have just kept running, or unmasked them when they were going over the fucker in the first place. Gail emerges from a hiding spot in the recording studio thing. They're coincidentally bumping into a blood-covered cotton before running away. Sydney runs back to the college, arriving in the theatre, which is mysteriously playing music. The music cuts out and a spotlight shines on her as the set starts to assemble around her, trapping her. Derek's body suddenly drops down attached to a piece of set, and Sydney tries to free him until the killer emerges. I say Derek's body. Derek is alive at this point. The killer unmasks himself, of course, revealing Mickey underneath. The character the film seems to have forgotten about. If I'm honest, he did sort of disappear for most of it. It's in a couple of scenes, but not a lot. Mickey, may I add, has a wound on his head, which isn't really explained, but it's clear he was the ghost face that was driving the car, because...
Well, it would make sense.
It would make sense that he has the head wound if it knocked him
when
out.
You pointed it out as well. Yeah, that would definitely have been him.
Yeah, it just makes sense. Because where else would he have got the head wound from?
That's a bit...
It seems like a continuity error until you think about it. So yeah, the killer unmasks himself, revealing Mickey, and he tries to incriminate Derek as his accomplice. Derek understandably denies his accusation as Sydney gets confused. However, Mickey pulls a gun and shoots Derek in the chest, which kills him. Mickey continues to hold Sydney at gunpoint, pointing out his full plan to her. It's your very specific bad guy monologue that you get in every film, where instead of just killing the fucking victim, they need to blah 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 blah. Give the hero a chance to escape. As Mickey monologues, Sydney disarms him and makes a run for the gun. However, she fails to make it before him as Derek's corpse is suddenly raised back up. Mickey... Oh, I don't know how I can word this. Mickey, reveals that he has an accomplice, and Gail suddenly emerges. However, she's being held at gunpoint, of course, by Debbie, our other killer. However, Debbie, in reality, as recognised by Sydney, is Billy's mother. Billy Loomis from the first one, Nancy, who shoots at Mickey multiple times, and as he falls, he shoots Gail in the chest, and she falls off the stage. Miss Loomis takes his gun and insists on getting vengeance, framing Mickey for the murders. Nancy has a psychotic breakdown, and when distracted, Sydney attacks her. Nancy blindly fires through the set, cutting several ropes, which Sydney sees and cuts down more of them, eventually dropping some pieces of the set on her. Sydney emerges when Nancy once more attacks her, however Cotton arrives out of nowhere, causing a standoff. Nancy attempts to talk him into seeing her side of the things, but Cotton doesn't fall for it, shooting Nancy in the neck. Sydney stands back up, taking Cotton's gun and checking Nancy's body. Gal re-emerges from below and Cotton helps her up. And Mickey, of course, because it's a Scream film, pops back out of nowhere and is killed by Gail and Sydney before they shoot Nancy in the head to confirm she is dead. Because as they say, the killer always comes back for one last scare. And to be fair, I'd shoot the bitch in the head just to be safe. As the rules laid out in Zombieland, double tap the fuckers. Otherwise, they're just going to get back up. Excuse me. The next day, the emergency services secure the scene as Joel returns to help. Paramedics wheel out a somehow still alive Dewey, with Gail joining him in the ambulance instead of reporting the murders. Cotton attempts to leave quietly, but Sydney tells the reporters to grant his wish of an interview as the film comes to an end. There we are, Scream 2. We can now check off the list at last, after basically over a month of waiting. So, it's time to ask the magic questions that we always have to ask Amelia. Amelia, as your
Ew, that was weird.
What do you mean that was weird?
You addressed me by my first name.
Well, I have to. I can't be like, babe. Anyway, go on. Do your usual spiel.
My biggest pet peeve with this is that I have the copy where, back in the day when everyone had their old tellies.
Yeah, we had to watch it with the aspect ratio being so small, with just massive black boxes.
Yeah, that's
We may need to replace those
my
with them
my biggest issue with that. Because obviously their kind of heads were cut off a bit when.
sometimes.
So yeah, but then other than that, she could have just unmasked the killer and stuff. But there you go.
And it's the first of those times where the killers are a bit forced and don't really make a lot of sense.
But I didn't hate it because obviously I have them all on DVD.
Would you say it was your cup of tea?
Yeah, it was my cup of tea.
It was her cup of tea. She said it. She answered our questions, ladies. And any other thoughts you want to give off before we wrap things up and call it a day?
Just that if anyone, which I highly doubt, is seeing this from the Scream thing, just fucking bring Matthew Lillard back.
Please bring me.
This is what your audience wants.
Like, come on. You literally had a joke about it in the sixth one. Just bring him back.
Because generally, if he's not in the seventh one, I don't think I'm going to bother with him anymore. Because it's a bit like Halloween. There's got to be a time when it's got to end.
Well, as I said to you,
Because it is. We get to like, what is it? 5 was like the reboot, which was really
five
good.
was cool, having it back, and then 6 was just your regular sequel.
No, it just feels repetitive, and it's just like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. That's the only issue, is that with these sequels, especially, well, admittedly, they have the guts to kill off some main characters later on. But unfortunately,
You think they should have just, if they're not going to bring Matthew Lillard back one last time, I think they should just stop 5. But
6. Oh, do you mean stopped at 5?
when they
But 6 is out.
bought Cindy back.
Yeah, having Sydney back is great, and then she didn't come back for the 6th one. It's not. It's losing its magic now
Because
because
it's like in the 6th one, you've just got a random cameo by Samara Weaving, who's a lot.
I mean, I do love Samara Weaving. She's in a lot of good stuff.
She's really hot as well. Just saying.
We may cover Babysitter at some point, but I fucking hate those films.
I love them films.
You love them. I
think
hate
they
them.
would be my choice.
It's absolute trash. But you can cover it. We can cover them soon if you want.
But as I say, she's in Ready or Not. She's a really good actor. She's been in loads. But
She's in all sorts.
I just
She's good.
don't understand the stupid cameo by her at the beginning. Like, at least give her a bit more instead of just like the opening bit.
Well, then again, they had Drew Barrymore at the start of the first one, and they had Jada Pinkett Smith at the start of this one. So having like these big stars come in is sort of part of the appeal of having like big names killed off at the start. And as we will discover in Scream 3, which is my least favourite of the series, mainly because of the stupid voice changer and some of the logic in that doesn't make sense. We will get to that in a few weeks' time. But I think next week you said you're going to do Halloween 2, the Rob Zombie one.
Yeah, so
that's the plan.
Like, we just watch the now that we have just to like recap it and then go. Just because the second one is a bit trippy.
Yeah, it's definitely like a Rob Zombie fucking music video. Yeah, overall, this film was still really good, of course. Nearly forgot Best Kill, Worst Kill.
Well, we have it on.
Well, yeah, we have it on DVD. Best Kill, as mentioned, goes to Roberts. I mean, how can we not have a dude's head being impaled on a pole?
Yeah, that was the only gory thing in there. Like
that's a lot for Scream.
Ooh.
Worst kill can go to Derek. One gunshot to the chest doesn't really cut it in these films. Like, at least people are getting stabbed and throat slit. Other than that, yeah, as mentioned, we definitely really enjoyed it. It's not as good as the first one, mainly because the killers are a bit more forced. As we will realise later on, they do like to force some random people as the killers. As I said with Scream 6, I predicted one of them. But other than that, you've got all the main characters, and then you've got new characters introduced to the film, which just make you go, well, it's one of them, innit?
Yeah, I just
But if they
Personally, I
bring
just
Matthew
don't
Lillard back, you
believe.
can have all these red herrings, which turns out to in reality not be any of them, but in fact a vengeful Stu coming
I
back to
just
finish the job.
think that even though Halloween went on for years and years,
At least it ended.
at least they stopped with that. I mean, obviously, if they do a reboot,
They probably will.
it's gonna be with someone else, not Jamie Lee Curtis. But at least they knew when to kind of quit it.
Yeah, they took their time. Don't get me wrong. There's problem, but at least it's hopefully definitively over. But we will see.
Well, I think if they do Halloween again, it's gonna be a new cast, not with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Similar to that
And
of
just
the
new
Rob Zombie
people.
remakes of it being new people
Which
entirely.
obviously, being realistic, it's not going to be,
It's
the
not going to be the classic.
previous Halloweens with
Mm.
Jamie Lee Curtis. I think she did really well, and that's what she's most known for.
Yes. So yeah, it'll be Halloween 2 for you next week. I believe in a few days I can finally cover The Lost World Jurassic Park. As I've finished the book and I'm excited for it.
You read the whole book and constantly kept telling me what.
I have to. And you're
I
gonna
didn't need to
you-
read it
You are
myself.
going to have to hear it all over again when we cover it in a couple of days' time. Because I have to make the comparisons to the book. And famously, the second one is not very well adapted
Well,
into the
the
film.
the book that I've found, which is why now I don't do both, is that a lot of them will miss a lot of stuff out. So like the last letters from your lover that we saw at the cinema, they missed so much out of the fucking book that really pissed me off.
We'll probably get around to that. It's on Netflix in a moment.
Um,
I'm sure we'll cover that
And
soon.
it's like If I Stay, that was a book, then went to a film. Along for a Ride was a book, went into a film.
She likes books, if you didn't guess.
And I just thought after that, I just give up now. I just don't bother watching. Sorry,
Adaptations of
reading the book
books.
if the film's there, because what's the point? Because they're not going to match. They just say it based off the book by whoever.
Anyway, you can save your full rambling the Lost Worlds review.
What? That's my contribution.
Yeah, but it's got nothing to do with this. In the meantime, thank you ever so much for listening to our ramblings for the last, how long? Half an hour plus. I, of course, have always been your host, apart from when I joined, as ever, by Amelia, the Obsidian Nook, Petal
I
SMR.
hate it when he's.
Yeah, well, I can't just call you by your fucking YouTube channel name. Doesn't make sense. You can find her links in the description alongside all of ours. As mentioned, it will be The Lost World Jurassic Park this week for me, and then Halloween 2, the Rob Zombie film, on Saturday-ish.
Unless I change my mind.
Unless she changes her mind.
Happens a lot.
It does happen a lot. We have a lot of films we want to cover, but in the meantime, thank you for listening, and we will see you in the next one.